Okay. Hello, welcome to the Chthonia Wednesday live stream. I may start doing these on Wednesdays going forward. It seems like right now that might be the best day for me. Mondays and Thursdays are going to become busy with other things as I get into March. And honestly, this is just it has just been a really, really busy week. So what I want to do on this particular live stream, and I posted about this quite late, so I don't know who's really going to be joining me today, but whoever joins me, great. If not, the recording will be there for people who want to see it. And whether or not I go to a full hour today or not, we'll see about that. And it's Kathleen. Hello. Good to see you. So I do have somebody here with me today. That's great. Looks like we might have a couple people. But yeah, so today's topics, I'm going to talk a little bit about Chthonia. I'm going to do a little bit of an update on what's going on, what I've been up to. And, oh, hello. Hello, Stephen. So I will give you a little bit of an update on what I'm working on. And then I'm going to get into a couple of subjects. Like I said, today, this is not a podcast week in the sense that I didn't post a podcast. I post podcasts every other week. And Veronica, hello, good to see you. You've got some Patreon people here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Chthonia. I'm going to get into the updates that I have. And then after I do that, there's the couple of topics that I want to talk about. I do have a new essay that I've put out on, well, I haven't put it out yet. Let me back up here. I've submitted it to Metapsychosis Journal, which anybody who's known me for a long time knows I used to be an editor there. And they are working on their 10th anniversary issue, which happens to be on the liminal. So, of course, people know me, and liminal is one of my favorite words. In fact, I think my business used to be called Liminal Reiki, but I realized nobody had any clue what that meant. And of course, it implied that I just did Reiki, which I didn't. So, I mean, that was one of my practices. It still is, but it's not the only one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that essay, which is actually on a certain aspect of the liminal aesthetic that's called the Backrooms. So I'm going to chat about that a little bit. And then I have been having another conversation recently with another friend who usually she's on the other channel, but we've been talking a lot about solar chthonic deities. If you follow, I think she's on there as Phytoholographic Sam. I think that's how she's on there. Phytoholographic.sam if you're on Instagram. And her stuff is really interesting. She does a lot of really interesting work with herbals and nutritions and connected to astrology and to other things. So she's definitely fascinating person to follow. But she and I have been having a few like off-screen conversations about solar chthonic deities. And I may not be the only one she's talking to about this subject to. It just seems to be a thing that we have in common. And anybody who is on Patreon knows that I did a podcast on a goddess called Amoretsu, who is a Japanese sun goddess. And so there's going to be a new, if you are on Patreon, there's going to be a new special edition podcast that probably will come out tonight. It's going to depend on how much editing it needs, because I'm going to be recording it after I get off of here. Then it will be, which will be on a goddess called Chtha. Chtha is an Etruscan goddess. I think Chtha is the right way to say her name. And she is another Etruscan deity who is associated with the sun. Sometimes she is called the feminine sun of the Etruscan pantheon. I think Ushil is the name of the sun god in the Etruscan pantheon, but she is kind of the feminine aspect of Ushil. So and that she's a figure that kind of ties into some other work that I've been doing and so forth. So anyway, I've been moving on this solar chthonic track, and so I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to discuss Chtha in this particular live stream, not in any detail, but just some of the interesting things I'm finding about solar chthonic deities. And there are some people I know who have, I know that on the last one I did on Patreon, somebody left me a really long comment, and it was a really long and interesting comment. And I'm like, oh, I need to sit down and properly respond to this. And I don't think I've done that yet. So apologies to CDV on Patreon. I will definitely be responding to what she had posted the other day, because she's been listening to these and giving a lot of thought and a lot of good feedback on them. So I find it very interesting. In any case, if you're not on Patreon and you would like to be, people who are at the $1 level basically get access to early access to episodes and they get regular, when I do my regular updates, I always include the $1 patrons. And of course, there's a shout out that I give to those patrons as well. $5 level and above, the benefits include the special podcasts, and they also include the chance to take some courses, whether you take them at the Institute for the Study of Feminine Myth. I also have a list of mini courses. I haven't been keeping up with that one as much as I would like to, but the bottom line is that I'm spread really thin. So there's only so much that I can do as it is. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've been up to for people who follow me. And then I will give you some, Chthonia updates, and then we'll get into those subjects. So, okay. So first of all, absolutely busy week. It's going to be an absolutely, I'm looking at my calendar for the rest of February, and I'm like, I'm just kind of booked solid for the rest of February, between appointments with clients over on Transition Life Coaching, between classes that I'm giving. Those people who are interested in tarot, I am doing a tarot workshop this coming Saturday, on the 15th of February. So if anybody wants to sign up for that, you don't have to be a student of that particular class. You just have to be somebody who's doing it and is interested if you want to sign on and take that one, because it's really just a workshop to let people have a chance to practice and talk about topics and so forth. And I have a couple of clients on Sunday. And then the following weekend, I've been doing Reiki Master Training for people. So I've been working on that for a couple of students, a couple of my original Reiki students. And I'm doing another Reiki 1 class by request up in Milford. So so I have all my weekends are pretty much booked solid for the rest of the month, because then we're already into March after next weekend. I mean, it's the 22nd, 23rd, and then we move into March. So and my weeks, I think I might have mentioned, maybe I mentioned it on another place. I have been hired to teach another class at the university that I retired from. And it's going to be more in the library realm, information literacy, that kind of stuff. And we're trying to get the HR stuff sorted out with that, because I keep getting things to set up accounts. And I'm like, yeah, but nobody's given me any ID numbers yet, or offer letters or anything like that. And I found out today, they're like, oh no, you definitely have the job. But anyway, we'll see what's going on with HR. I have mixed feelings about the HR department there from having worked there before. So we'll see what happens. So and how that works out. Okay. So that's going on this week. And then just other random stuff, getting my hair cut, things like that. Not too short for people who like the length of it, but it hasn't been cut in over a year. So it's like, I really, I need to do something with it. So at least I need to get it trimmed. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, some of that's personal stuff, some of that's Chthonia stuff. The new podcast is going to be on Lua, Lua, who is connected to the Roman Saturn. And so I'm going to be, that's going to be the podcast subject for next week. I have a list. I did post a list at some point. I think I posted on Instagram. Certainly I posted it on Patreon. And I think probably showed up on Facebook as well, if people follow me there. And so I have the complete list for the year, but I kind of go through and I pick and choose and say, okay, what do I feel like doing, instead of trying to do everything in the order that I wrote it down. So we're getting onto that. Remastered episodes, we're still working through those. I put up Medusa last week. So anybody who subscribed to the podcast via Spreaker or subscribed on YouTube would have seen the update on that. Now, Medusa, that was an original episode. People who are watching those who might be new to Chthonia, or I shouldn't say brand new, but haven't been around since the beginning. The first year I did a lot of podcasts. And the way that I did them initially, first of all, I did it while I was working 14-hour days. So a lot of times the quality of those in terms of the sound quality, and also things like, hearing swallowing and stuff on the mic. I mean, that was not very well. It wasn't edited at all. Let's just say not well edited. It wasn't edited at all. So thankfully I have somebody on my Patreon, Ali, who volunteered to go back and start re-editing some of the stuff for me, at least taking that kind of stuff out. The volume issues and stuff I've tried to work with. I am hoping that the Medusa one came out okay, because I had to do some sound. I had to play around with the sound boosts on that one, and I'm hoping it wasn't too uneven, like it gets loud, get loud and then gets off. And the next one that she has completed for me that I'll put out is for On Artemis. So again, these are a lot of the original episodes. I'm putting them out again with cleaning up some of the sound issues that were on the first ones. but I didn't change the endings, so the endings still may be talking about stuff I was doing in 2019, so people can just, skip over that part. But yeah, part of the reason is, and it's funny, as she's working with me on them, she says, wow, these take a lot of time to go through. I said, yes, they do. When I have to edit an episode, if an episode takes me an hour to record, it can take me anywhere from 2 to 3 hours to edit. And that's just taking out sounds. And I try to take out I know I'm incredibly aware that I'm a, kind of person when I talk. So I try to take some of that out if it seems excessively annoying. So in any case, that's just a little behind the scenes on that. But those are coming out, and I'm probably going to post a list to Patreon this week of the ones that are out so far, just for people who might not be aware that they're out there and might be interested or might have been waiting for them to come back. So, okay, books. I have sold the copies that I have, and they're still up on my website, is the Black Friday sale. I'm realized, wow, this November was the last time I really edited that. The links are actually still good. They haven't changed. It's just that Black Friday's a long way away at this point. And I have, let's see. So I think I have 4 copies of Archetype Possession. I have 2 copies of the Morrigan Timelines. I have 2 copies of Regenerator and 3 copies of Maeve. I'm sold out on Project Lethe. And any copies that people buy from me, if they buy, and again, this is USA only, unfortunately, because of postal. If I have to send it overseas, it's usually a minimum $20 to send it overseas. So I will, so in any case, so it's basically $5 for the book and $5 for media shipping. So if I do that, then I usually sign a copy and I will send it. So those are the ones I have left. If people are interested in those, I will, again, I'm going to try to update. I haven't really been on Instagram a whole lot this week, so I'm going to try to update all that stuff. And like I said, I mentioned the Patreon episode, and oh yeah, Institute for the Study of Feminine Myth. That is, the classes start March 15th. If people are interested in taking those, check out instituteforfemininemyth.org. I always put it in my podcasts. I always have down in the description below. I'll have a link to the school, to my merch site. I do have merch for both Chthonia and for the school on spring.com. And I have a lot of other, and I have my Patreon link and I have my website link. So all of that I always put with every podcast episode on YouTube and on Spreaker. So if you check the descriptions, you should find that information. But I am going to post some more stuff on Instagram this week. So, and if the price of the classes for the full term is like making anybody go, no, I don't know if I want to commit to that. If the issue isn't that the time commitment or the work, the work commitment, which isn't necessarily huge, it's just at the end, we do a project at the end to get the certificate. And that if that's not a huge thing for you, then financials can always be worked out. So if it's like okay, I don't have this, I have a 2 payment option up, I think. But if people say, well, no, I can only give you like $100 until I'm paid up or whatever, or less than that even, just let me know. Just message me. Chthonia@chthonia.net is where you can reach me on email. And if you're on my Instagram or something, you can DM me as well. So, okay. Enough with updates. I know that that's not people's favorite part of these live streams, but I did want to just make sure that I was, for the people who are following and are interested in what I'm doing, I wanted to make sure we were all caught up with that and on that kind of work. The only other thing too is that I was just interviewed for a program in England. Now, again, I don't know. I'm waiting to find out. I think I had a first interview, and it's likely I'm going to have a second interview. And if they give me an acceptance after the second interview, then I will be moving out of the country by August. So just so you know, I would be in the UK for 4 years, doing clinical psychological stuff, and probably doing it in psychodynamic psychotherapy, which is object relations, Winnicott, Freud, like that kind of stuff. It wouldn't be the Jungian stuff that I do. Again, assuming I got accepted. But at the moment, I'm waiting to see what they say, because they have to give me a visa, and then I have to, have the money and all that kind of stuff too. So anyway, that's what's coming up right now in terms of my personal life. So as you look behind me in my living room, you will notice the way the bookcases are emptying. And there's the one over there. I think I can point to it. That one I still have not emptied yet, but that is the last one to empty. Anything that's on that is either stuff that's up for sale on eBay, or it's some of the books that I need to keep for my academic work. So, and the other side, I just have a few CDs, DVDs. Whether I can keep all of those or not, quite possibly no. So we'll have to see when we get there. But the collection has gotten whittled way, way down. Between Habitat for Humanity, the local library that has a friends that takes books, and the stuff I've put on eBay. Stuff I put on eBay is still there. I have a lot of stuff on eBay if you're interested in occult, esoteric topics. If you're interested in Edward Gorey, I have a lot of material up there. And I just had one seller who I had one buyer who has been jerking me around for like 3 weeks. I really hate when people email me and try to act like, we're best friends or something. I'm like, I don't know you. And, if you can't, don't bid on stuff you can't pay for, So anyway, I had to do some cancellations over there, but for the most part, the stuff has been going out pretty steadily, but I just want people to know that it's there, and that's probably something else I will post a link to this week. Again, just for people who are interested and might, say, yeah, that they might want some of this stuff. I'm trying to put it up for pretty good prices. So, all right. So now let's move on to topics. Enough with my updates. Okay. So the essay I put in the other day for Marco, I spent pretty much yesterday up through about 8 o'clock yesterday evening, just editing it and putting references in, because if I'm going to put it up, it's not, some of the references are just, kicking. Fingers crossed for the possibility you'll be closer in Europe. Yes, that would be, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything. I really hope so, because this is something I've been trying to do for like 10 years, and it seems like this may be the right time and the right opportunity, but we'll see. Like I said, I don't want to, what's the expression? I don't want to count any chickens before they're hatched. So we'll see what goes with that. But we're stepping in that direction for sure. Okay. So so this essay that I had written was on the subject of the Backrooms. Now, again, I did do a Patreon only episode that was on the idea, the psychology of the uncanny. I think that was one of the mini courses that I wanted to offer. And I don't know if I know I'd worked on the slides for it. I don't know if I ever actually put it up or not, because I just literally don't remember at this point. But I had to go back and find that. So when I actually did this essay, it's not a transcription of that podcast, but what it is I have a, how do I want to put it? I kind of referred back to that and the ideas that I had and the figures that I had discussed in that particular episode. And I said, okay, I'm going to talk about that in this essay. And I found that this essay kind of went in a very interesting direction. Okay, because a lot of people, and I'm on here, I'm trying to make sure I can see the comments, but I'm also wanting to look at what I actually wrote here. Okay, so what this essay is going to be about, and like I said, when it comes out, if it's what Marco was looking for, I feel they'll probably find a space for it somewhere. I will certainly link to it when it comes out. But so it was kind of going back to the whole notion of the Backrooms. Now, the Backrooms is a concept. Apparently, this whole thing, along with what they call the liminal aesthetic. Okay. Now, what do we mean by the liminal aesthetic? Okay, liminal spaces are places where there's a border, where there's a threshold. Okay, the liminal comes from the Latin word limen, Limen, which literally means that border or threshold, like between two places. And it's a term that's really frequently used in anthropology. So it's not necessarily familiar outside of that context. And I guess because even though I work in psychology, I also end up doing a lot of crossover work in anthropology. So these are the kind of terms that I deal with on a regular basis. But so the idea of the liminal aesthetic is that it's basically these images of spaces that are empty, spaces that are they may just look, there just may be something about them, not only that they're vacant or maybe even just abandoned, like for example, images of abandoned shopping malls, okay, or images of like abandoned amusement parks, things like that, things where we have perhaps a nostalgic association with them, but they are no longer, they're just abandoned. They're like devoid of their purpose now. You go there and they're just vacant. The original Backrooms kind of story, urban, not really, I don't know if you want to call it an urban legend, but it was something that came out of the gaming community. And it was a picture, it was something on 4chan where somebody had said, okay, post a pictures that you find to be kind of vaguely disturbing, unsettling, whatever. And so there's a very, very famous picture now. If you actually ever go onto Google and you search Backrooms, original picture, Backrooms, Backrooms as one word, original picture, you will see this photo. And it's basically a photo of this space that looks, honestly, I think it's actually, they said it was like a hobby town store that was being renovated or something, but it's just a space that almost looks like it could be a hotel lobby, but it's very, it's in these yellow colors, like this kind of yellow patterned wallpaper with beige carpet and, the kind of high fluorescent lights that you would have. If you've ever gone to a conference center and you've been in one of those places where, you're sitting under those kinds of lights, and you've got kind of the bad coffee and the mauve furniture or the gray furniture, and it all kind of looks the same. And it's, I don't know, it's just kind of cold, and you can see that like the damp is growing in certain corners and everything. I don't know. There's a feeling that goes with it. And in this case, it was an entirely empty space. Just except for this wallpaper, this carpeting. And they had put something, there was some kind of a quote. Let me see if I have the quote. Actually, I think I do have it. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. The original quote that was posted by the 4chan poster was as follows: "If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights and at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square randomly segmented square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you." Okay. So super creepy, right? Very creepy aesthetic. And the image is, it's of a very ordinary looking space in a lot of ways that's just vacant, but it is very unsettling. I'm reminded of Charlotte Perkins Gilman's work, The Yellow Wallpaper, which is usually considered to be a kind of work of feminist literature. But it was about a woman who is kind of confined to her room for, her mental health or, the rest cure or whatever it is that she has to do. And the way in which sitting in this room with this yellow wallpaper starts to drive her, a little bit over the edge. And so she is, so yeah, there's this monotony to it. And the thing is, like, if you had to sit in a space like that all day, like if you thought about it, it would affect you after a while. I think like I would lose my will to live if I was in a space like that for too long. So, yeah, so it's very much it's definitely a creepy, unsettling kind of aesthetic. But the idea is that if this was sort of like it's almost like, okay, no clipping is a term that is used, like it's a mode, I think, in gaming where people can pass through solid objects. So it's almost like if you no clip, you go through a wall and then all of a sudden you're in this space. And it's like, how do you get back out to where you were? Because now you're just in an endless maze of these kinds of rooms. And the thing is, what else is in there with you? Okay, that's kind of the vibe of it, which is very unsettling. Now, the thoughts that I really had about this, so there was a couple of concepts. There was the concept of liminality and the liminal aesthetic, but there's also the concept of the uncanny. And that is the other thing that I was addressing. Now, uncanny is a term that we hear now. We tend to see it in connection with robotics in particular. The idea that the more you try to make something like a human being, there's like this valley, like this gap between what is truly human and what is appearing to be human. And that the closer, the more human-like something tries to be, it's almost like the moment you become aware of the fact that something's off, that you're not dealing with something that's quite human, it has an effect on you. It has a revolting effect on you. Like, like now you think, I don't know, you're talking to aliens or something, like, there's a feeling that, that there's something wrong with this otherwise normal seeming interaction. And that has been a thing that's been very difficult for those who want to make human-like robots, robots that don't just look like mechanical, things clunking around. They want to give them personalities and so forth. We're seeing a lot of this with AI. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I think they're trying to lift people's voices and identities and stuff for AI, because they want it to sound human. But the humans who hear it know that it's not them. And unfortunately, even if it sounds human, you still know it's AI, because the way it interacts with you is still not, there's still something about it that tells you that you're not dealing with a human being. When I have students I have assignments obviously every week for my students. And if they try to answer those assignments with AI, I know it right away. I can hear it. I know it. I'm just like, no, this is ChatGPT. I X this out. You're not getting credit for this. Rewrite it, and I want it in your own imperfect way. I'm very big on, I think sometimes this push towards wanting to do everything with AI is a push towards perfection. I want it to be absolutely perfect. I want it to be, I want to sound good. I want to sound professional. I want to, I want to put forth the image. And we do that a lot too with social media and so forth too, right? We want our images, we filter our images, and you want the best, the best pictures of you up there. And even people who don't use filters, if you go on and you have, like if you have a social media page, everything you post to that social media page might portray your life in a way. Like, for example, somebody who has a crappy marriage, but they only show pictures of themselves and their family, and they're all smiling and happy, and the reality may or may not actually be that. There's a lot of ways in which people will use this kind of the internet and the front screen to kind of project an image and to make people. It's kind of a mask that people wear when they go on. And to a certain degree, we all have that. I mean, that's what archetypal psychology calls the persona, right? Persona is a word for mask. It's a Greek word for mask, and it's the ones that were used in theater, particularly, because they would wear masks with these that's why you can see the comedy and tragedy masks. I mean, they would have these very exaggerated expressions on them. That's what the actors would wear. And that's where the term persona comes from. And it's the idea that there's an image that we all learn this as part of socialization. We have an image that we project to people that allows us to interface with the world, that allows us to connect with people. We may have things about ourselves, and this is what we talk about when we talk about shadow, the things about ourselves that maybe we don't want to share it with other people, or we think other people would think we're weird or crazy, or I don't know, whatever critique we might have of it. There's a lot of times we have things about ourselves that we keep secret, that we want to keep to ourselves because we don't want other people to know about them for whatever reason. I mean, and it could be that you tell people about them and they might be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, maybe it's something they're interested in too. I mean, you don't even know. But a lot of times we have a very strong sense of self-judgment and self-preservation in the sense of, I don't want to do anything to damage that relationship, that social relationship that I have with people. So frequently, even it's like if you have to go into work and you've been having a bad day, maybe you've been sad, maybe things have been happening that are negative, maybe you've been angry, you go in and you still have to kind of smile and put on a face like everything's fine, because and some people are better at hiding it than others. But in any case, these are all examples of the way in which we may interface in a way that's not, but a lot of those things are very, very human things. These are kind of the characteristics of being human that when you're talking about artificial intelligence, or you're talking about robots, or you're talking about these other types of beings, or even people just making mannequins or things or sculpture that are trying to be very lifelike, there's always something about it that tells you that there's a difference. Like, it's like this doesn't look or feel. There's something inside of us that perceives what's going on, and you don't quite perceive it as, and it's not quite what it appears to be. And that's what we call that's the way, at least in robotics, they talk about uncanniness. Now, the term uncanny actually comes from the German word unheimlich, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but It's basically like we've heard of Heimlich. Heimlich is actually, I think, a name. We talk about the Heimlich maneuver, like if you're choking and somebody, does the thing and, to help you get it out. Probably named for a person, but that is a German word. Heimlich is a German word. And it is a word that implies a couple of different things. Now, when we talk about unheimlich, we are talking about, first, it was Ernst Jens who did the first essay on the uncanny. And Jens was talking about, he talks about the uncanny as it has to do with intellectual capacity is the phrase that he had used. So in other words, what he considered to be uncanny, and this was written in 1906, so this is quite a long time ago, that he considered an uncanny feeling to be when you went into a situation where you did not have either the context or the intellectual familiarity to know what was going on. So like if you walk into a school or into a place or something and yeah, you called live. Oh, yes, hello. I'm sorry, I just saw your message here now. It's the so if we go in and if you go into a place, like if you walk into a party, okay, and everybody there, then that's a little bit more comfortable, especially if it's all people you like. If you're walking into a party full of people you don't like, that's a whole different thing, right? Or there's somebody there that you don't like. But if you like everybody there, then that's all good. If you walk into a place though where you're the new person, nobody knows you, and you may be going for whatever reason. You may be going to, it could be a networking event, it could be something, but it's something where you're going in and you don't know anybody. Then this is what Jens talks about, kind of being in a space that's a little uncanny. Like you go in, you're not as sure of yourself. You feel a little bit insecure because you don't have the knowledge. You think that you're going in, that in going in, and there could be a certain fear factor connected with that as well. That fear of the unknown gets heightened when you don't know what you're doing. And he bases this on the fact that the word Heimlich means, it has to do with familiarity. Like it often means like a native or familiar or homey. That this is that you are something very domestic feeling about Heimlich. So the idea of unheimlich, therefore, if you think about it as an opposite, is something that's unfamiliar, something that's not your home, something that's foreign to you, would be in that definition unheimlich. Now, Freud took that definition to task because he said, while on the one hand, he said, well, it's really great that, he thought it was, he was surprised and perhaps a bit despairing that when we have the that the idea of the uncanny was something that was not addressed by those who work in aesthetics. And aesthetics is considered to be a branch of philosophy, because oftentimes when people write about aesthetics, we talk about beauty. We talk about this has to do with atmosphere and the way in which certain aspects, whether it be colors, whether it be shapes, whether it be the way spaces are laid out, the way in which they may inspire a sense of beauty or a sense of awe. Like aesthetics tends to focus a lot on that and not on the things that make us feel the opposite. So Freud thought, well, that's too bad that people are not doing that. But he pointed to Jens' essay and he said, the problem with his definition is that it doesn't go far enough. So he actually did this whole linguistic breakdown of Heimlich and words like Heimlich, okay, and unheimlich. He kind of did both words. And what was interesting, what he pointed out in all the definitions that we had talked about Heimlich as representing what's familiar and what's homey and all that kind of stuff, is that when you're talking about unheimlich, you are talking, it's not so much that you are just talking about what's unfamiliar, but it's, okay, Heimlich has a second meaning. That's where I really want to start here. Heimlich has a second meaning, and it means to conceal something that you don't want people to see or that people should not see. Kind of going back to what I said about personas before, right? So when we talk about something that's that is unheimlich, then we are talking about something that, well, actually, even when we're talking about Heimlich, you could be talking about something that, that you don't want people to know for whatever reason. For some reason, it's something that you want to keep a secret, or it's the kind of thing that should not be revealed to people. Okay. And this often gets, it's something that would make people uncomfortable if they knew it in some way. So he said in that way, it's almost like unheimlich and Heimlich kind of have a crossover meaning, because they both have to do with things that are either unfamiliar or things that are concealed. So from that, jumping off from that perspective, Freud decided that he was going to define the uncanny, the unheimlich, as that which is repressed, that unconscious content, things that are repressed. Usually he saw it as being connected to infantile complexes, the Oedipus complex and the things like that. The idea of that some event will trigger you to engage in a behavior that's old, okay, like a past behavior. And so he sees it as kind of like, in a way that the sense of the uncanny is when a kind of complex is triggered. Now, the examples he gave of it, they both give examples from literature, but the one example that Freud gives of it is, he says, if you are, first of all, he talks about the idea of the doppelganger, right? That if you saw somebody who was a perfect double of yourself, like, there'd be that's an uncanny thing. Even if that person is just a legitimate person who happens to look like you, right? It's the idea of, really, when we talk about a doppelganger, if you're talking about it in the more paranormal kind of sense, doppelgangers are doubles of you that generally you're not in the same space at the same time. But if you're like in the same building, the same home, whatever, typically they don't talk. Okay. Or they don't do certain things. I remember reading about Heim is a German noun meaning home. Yes. Thank you. Yes, that's right. Exactly. It's this idea of home or homeliness, or feeling at home with something. Right. And so the idea there is that the way Freud saw this was that if you had a situation where like you see this double, and like I said, in paranormal terms, the doppelganger or the double is one, it's considered very unlucky to see your double, right? It's considered to be one of those things. And the one case that I had read about that I thought was interesting was when there was a woman, in her house, like her husband would talk to her and they would have conversations. And then later on, when she saw him, she would swear they never had that conversation. And he's like, there's got to be something wrong with her, because she's saying, but then when they were in the house, they noticed that there were two of her in the house. And so the investigators, like, one's like, okay, we're going to follow the other one. Because if they talked to the other one, if they said, oh, can you sign this piece of paper? They'd be like, oh, I'll do it later. Like, they wouldn't touch anything. It was really weird. Like, they have a certain kind of weird behavior when you're talking about a true doppelganger. So anyway, I don't want to diverge into that. But the other thing that Freud talked about was, like, when he was in a city. I'm not sure if he was in, but he was in I forget what city he was in, but he was at a piazza that was familiar to him. But then as he started to make turns to go somewhere, he kept going in circles, like he was lost. Like, he kept going in these circles, and he got a feeling that he described as being unheimlich. That it was that he was that it was just like this sense of, this lack of familiarity and this inability to figure out where he was. And that once he got himself back to where he started, he was relieved, because it was like, okay, I know where I am now. And you could think about that, like being lost in the woods or something. You hear about people with, like, fairy encounters, and they see us, like, a house or something. And then they somehow, they keep going back around to the same place, and they can't seem to get on a path away from it, and so they freak out. It's that uncanny feeling. That's what Freud was associating it with. So uncanniness, okay, we have this idea of, so these are a couple of different things. There's other thinkers. Lacan has his own version of it. Just Julia Kristeva has her own version of what it means to be, to deal with the uncanny. But what's uncanny is something that I think really, I kind of look at it as something that should be familiar, or has certain elements of the familiar, but you quickly realize that it's not what it appears to be. Like, that seems to be what's uncanny. Like, there's some kind of an instinct in you that tells you this is not what it appears to be. And anytime, that's that tricksterish element, we start to think, there's something here that's that's imitating something, but that's not what it is. Or there's something here that's where you're in a space and it just makes you it makes you feel in a kind of way that is very uncomfortable and very not at home. You know what I mean? But the idea of it is being something that you would conceal as well, revealing something that people should not see. That also has a sense of an uncanniness, and that would also be like, right, if you're trying to put on the facade of being normal, and then but then something gives away the fact that it's not. You know what I mean? So anyway, it's an interesting discussion about that term. So when I was looking at when I was discussing this idea of the uncanny, we always want to put things into to context that where we can relate to a particular experience. So okay, yeah, I was just going through my notes here. Okay, so another thing that I was looking at, and I talked a little bit about this too, was the way in which art can make use of that kind of a thing to some degree. And I'm thinking particularly of Lacan's view, because Lacan would said he connects the uncanny to it. He says a field of experience where we can't distinguish good from bad, pleasure from displeasure. Okay, so when we're not really sure how to feel in a particular situation, this is another version of the uncanny. And I was looking at the work of I don't know if any of you have ever seen the work of Alan Resnick. There's a channel called Alan, I think it's called Alan Tutorial, and it's meant to be a comedy channel. Okay, he's a comedian, but he does a very, very peculiar kind of comedy. It's almost the kind of thing you might see with Adult Swim or something like that. Or I was also thinking of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, which was a series that starts out looking kind of like an innocent kid's puppet show, and then it goes to some really, really dark places. And the same is true with Alan's Tutorial. It's like he's this guy who's kind of clumsy, and he's trying to be doing these DIY home projects and stuff. But then it's like it changes into something that becomes very gory and very revolting, or something happens that's just really traumatizing. And what it does is it leaves you in a space in between. I'm like, am I supposed to laugh or am I supposed to scream here? Like, what's going on? Like, you're not really sure how to respond to it. It jams your emotional responses and your frequency. And on Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is so cool. It is. I've watched that whole series and I'm fascinated by it. If people haven't seen that series, I mean, definitely starting with the very first one on, being creative, that one, that's a good example. I mean, I know it gets weirder than that as it goes on, but that one is one that starts out looking kind of very normal, and then you're just kind of like, what just happened? You get to the end of it. It is a really, really cool series, I think. And I think now they have Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared.tv now. I think you can subscribe and get new episodes of that. So I haven't done that, but I did see the promos for it. But in any case, yeah. And I mean, and the thing about that kind of art, and this is why I say to people, when we talk about AI art, or when we talk about AI writing and things like that, the reason you don't want to hand all that stuff over to AI, first of all it's doing is cannibalizing everything that you do. It's like the same computer maxim that we've had forever: garbage in, garbage out, right? GIGO. So in other words, whatever the computer puts out or whatever AI puts out is only as good as what's put into it. So this is why you have companies and things that want to get access to all of this material. They want access to copyrighted material. They want access to, people's original works of art and writing and things like that, because they want AI to learn from it. But it's not just that AI is learning from it, AI is actually stealing from it. And so an example that was given, I think, it was Phil Henley on Wings of Pegasus. He was talking about the way there had been a law, which thankfully was axed in Parliament, but there was a law about that I think Keir Starmer wanted to kind of make the UK, like, I think the term was like AI superpower or something. I saw the Reuters article on this. And so he was like, okay, we're going to give AI companies access to everything in the internet, in the UK. I've seen some genuinely good unhomely AI art, though. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, though, AI art is always, though, I figure that's what you meant there. Thank you. Yeah, I think the thing is, it's not that AI can't generate things that we like. The thing is, anything AI generates is ripped off from somewhere else, because that's just how it works. It just knows what it has. So the example that Phil had given was that he says, if you do an AI prompt and you want a particular type of a song, and let's just say a song he's written happens to be, that exact, that fits all the exact criteria that you're looking for when you create a song, it may literally just rip off his song and it might adjust some things about it and throw it out and say, okay, yeah, this is your AI generated song. And if he hears it and goes, well, no, that's my song, they'd say, no, AI created that. That's not your song, but it is his song. So if we think about the whole thing, like recently, what was that recent thing with Led Zeppelin, where that group Spirit claimed that Jimmy Page ripped off their riff for Stairway to Heaven or whatever, right? They had the big court case, which Spirit lost. But think about it. We go through things like that and say, look, you can't just copy this riff and, make your song around it, because this is an original, something that I created. But with AI can take anything and it becomes, oh, well, it's just the machine. It's just, so who has the copyright on that? Like, how does that work? Like, there's a whole lot there that's problematic just from that perspective. But the other thing too is that if you just feed everything to AI, yes, it can write books, it can write papers, it can write stuff, but the stuff it writes is generally wrong, or there's something about it that's wrong. And unless you know already what you're talking about, like I said, I have seen things in the areas that I'm an expert in, and they'll say like, oh yeah, there's this book, and I read through it and I'm like, this is junk, Isn't cannibalizing what this works part of creativity, though? What about sampling music or meme culture? I agree that handling huge amounts is a bad thing, but sampling is one thing, yes, and people do that too, and that's always a question. But the thing is, when we're talking about AI is putting things out there and representing it as something that it's not. Regarding art independently, lose path for originality, but okay, no, that's fine. I mean, it's fair enough, and I know that's certainly an opinion that I've heard. There's a lot of people who say, well, no, there is, there can be a benefit to this. It's not that it's always necessarily a bad thing. But the thing is, there's a lot about it that's out of control, in my opinion, at least. I feel like with AI, you have to. There's okay. So one of the examples I give is I have a friend who was looking up things on Agori Tantra, okay, and went on to AI and said, okay, I just want to find 6 good works on Tantra, and so the chat box came, yeah, great, here's 6 books, here they are. So went and looked up every single one of those books. None of them were real. Every single one of them was made up. There's and the thing is, AI will write entire books, and like I said, if you know the subject matter, you're going through that and going, wait a minute, where did it get this from? This isn't right. And that's what AI does. When it doesn't know something, it just fills in the gaps with whatever. This is a big problem in medical transcription, because if you're doing medical transcription, I know people who have had to go in and and fix a lot of these transcripts. I mean, and you have to have a human looking at them, because, for example, one of the most extreme examples was a woman who was, her doctors told her she had cancer, and she was being given chemo and treated for cancer. And then later on, as it turns out, with further testing and so forth, this woman never had cancer. AI just stuck that into her chart. Another maybe less dramatic example is somebody who their chart claims that they have injuries as a result of a car accident. This person was never in a car accident. It just makes stuff up. So this is a problem, and when you're doing something on a large scale like that, this it's hard to manage this even on a small scale. And a lot of artists, if they create original work, there are cases. I mean, like I said, like we were talking about sampling and that kind of a thing. Yes, people do that, and there can be the idea of repurposing people's work. But the question is, how far does one go to repurpose it, and is it just a complete, copy or ripoff of something? There's just not enough in place to really figure that out. So, but my whole thing about what I'm seeing now too, like in a lot of my apps and things. In fact, my computer makes a lot of groans at me a lot because I don't because I'm not updating it to Apple Intelligence. I'm like, I refuse to do it. And I know people can think what they want about that, but I'm just like, I already don't like that when I open my Adobe applications that it's already like, oh yeah, I'll help you do this. It'll help you do this. It'll help you do this. I'm like, I don't want it to help me do anything. I want it to leave me alone. And the thing is, if, it's very convenient to say, okay, well, we're going to let it just write everything. We're just going to let it do this. We're going to let it do that. And the problem is, if you especially as an educator, if you just let AI do all of that work for you, eventually you can't distinguish what's real from what's not real. And in terms of, because like I said, it does make stuff up and you might not know the difference. And it also doesn't, you also reach a point where you're not able to create for yourself because you kind of rely on it to do the creating for you. But it requires input in order to get output. It is kind of a self-feeding, cannibalizing cycle. It has to have information to put into it in order to get something out of it. That's a principle that has not changed about computing. Whatever you put in. I was a database analyst for years, and I was a cataloger for years. And part of the reason people couldn't find stuff was because if it's badly cataloged, people are like, oh, it doesn't matter, just throw something in. I'm like, no, if you just throw something in, it's bad data. People are not going to be able to find stuff, if you do it in that way. So there's a lot there about what the input is. But from a creative standpoint, when I look at something like this, okay, when we talk about things like AI, there's futurists like Kurzweil, right, who was talking about the way in which human technology is just going to end up merging. The human and the machine are going to merge at some point, which I think is also based very much on an idea that humans are basically machines of some kind, or that we're, what's the old, you're meat with eyes or whatever, right? That we're looked at in a very mechanistic kind of a way. And the other aspects of ourselves are not really being looked at. Like the whole idea of what we'll call the soul, a term some people don't like because they feel like there's too much of a religious inflection into it or something. But the idea of a soul is not necessarily just a religious concept. The idea of the soul has a lot to do with the inherent kind of core of your own psyche, the kind of core of what you do, what you are creatively. Lena says, I feel like we're already merged with the machines. We have metals and crystals within us, just like cell phones. Maybe it's not quite the same, though. Yeah, because we're all made up of elements. You could look at that another way, too, and say we're all made up of the same stuff as the stars, right? I mean, we're all made out of matter. But machines are something that is programmed. Now, we could kind of go into the holographic theories of the universe and things like that as well. Or are you living inside the matrix, or are you living in a simulation? And that's a whole can of worms that you could get into for sure. Oh, and we give off electrical frequency. Well, yes, certainly. We are electrical things, but I would not go as far as to say that we're machines, because machines have to be something that you program. There is a certain element to humanness. There is a certain element to human consciousness that is different. The self-consciousness that we have. And again, I don't feel that machines have that same level of self-consciousness, what I was, okay. The thing is, where I was going with this particular series, so we end. Let me just scroll down here. I'm just looking at what my notes are here. Okay, so right, my question is, okay, especially when dealing with AI and with stuff like this, is whether or not we are kind of putting ourselves in a kind of backroom scenario with that kind of a thing. Are you kind of endlessly moving through a space that kind of is just self-contained and self-cannibalizing in a way, that kind of just continually moves in this circle? And I don't know. My whole thing is, I look at this as kind of a potential to be a kind of almost a collective monster. There's an empty space there for which you can create possibilities. Now, this doesn't have to be a negative influence, okay? But like I said, the question is, in this kind of a space, do you lose the soul? Okay. So let me just move ahead because I know I'm running out of time here, and I want to make sure that I cover things. Okay. The other aspect of liminality that I was looking at, and she mentioned the question: do genetic and social influences count as programming? Kind of, but there's still something else. Yes, I mean your genetics that will say a lot about certain things, but they don't say everything. There's a lot there. There's a lot. Okay, if you want to follow my viewpoint on things, I think that what goes on within the body, neurologically, chemically, so forth, is barely the icing on the cake of what it means to be human, or what it means to be connected in a bigger way. And that's the connection that you don't want to forget about and that you don't want to lose. Okay, because that is the thing that I see is what we, if we run the risk of seeing ourselves as this kind of self-contained kind of system, which we are not. We are definitely something that is capable beyond that, and that has abilities beyond that. That are not just about, I mean, those kind of factors are important, but there's more to it than that. So anyway, the other thing I was saying about liminal spaces, while I have a couple of minutes left here. Liminality is often associated with the idea of initiation. Okay, previously in a lot of cultures, when we think about tribal cultures and so forth, the liminal is a space that is, when we talk about being in a liminal space, you are between phases. Oftentimes it's like a rite of passage. So, Victor Turner's work on rites of passage was kind of like you are moving from a space that is like from childhood to adolescence, for instance. There's kind of this in-between phase, and depending on the culture, the tribe, and so forth, you have initiators who kind of walk you through that phase. But while you're in that in-between phase, while you are considered to be, the term is neophyte, while you are a neophyte in that particular space, you are not the person you were before, and you are not the person that you have yet become. Okay, you're not either one of those things. You are not you're not those different things. You are not, you are not who you were. So you were in some kind of an in-between state. In some cultures, even, this was where you would have the ideas of third genders, like in Japan. The Wakashu in Japan were a group that were usually it was the boys. They said girls could also dress as Wakashu, but boys had this certain kind of privilege where they could. It was almost like they were both male and female, and neither at the same time. It was kind of like there was this kind of third gender that went on, but it was an adolescent thing. And then once you got past adolescence and went into adulthood, you went back to whatever that was. But certainly once Western influence came in, the whole idea of Wakashu, like men had to wear their hair cut a certain way, women had to have their hair a certain way. Everybody had to adhere to a certain social role. In other words, the idea of liminality was not allowed. There was no ambiguity. It had to be this or it had to be that. It had to have a label on it. It has to be this or it has to be that. And which is definitely something that we have in Western society. We have this whole idea of labeling, that we learn things by putting a label on it. And one of the interesting things I noticed about the Backrooms aesthetic was that what ended up happening with it is, you saw a lot of images. And during COVID, this aesthetic became very, very popular because people were kind of stuck at home in this space, right? But people like the gamers went and took it. And so now you have like video games of the Backrooms where you'll have like monsters that appear, or sometimes you'll have like really cute things that appear or something. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, well, that's not really the point of the liminal aesthetic. The whole point of the liminal aesthetic is that it's this space. But I'm like, yeah, okay. But what seems to be happening here is it's like, yeah, we're trying to put something in that space. We're trying to do exactly that. That's what our minds will trend to. We want to put a label on something. We want to put it there and we want to label it and we want to say what it is. And it's not always easy to say what that is. Or we want to give it a definite form, or we want to take it out of the realm of the uncanny. We want to put it into the realm of something that is familiar to us. So I don't know. So I was thinking about that. So really the kind of the point of this essay was thinking about the Backrooms as kind of a space. It's an uncanny and it's an uncomfortable space, But if we want to kind of think about that in terms of collective psychology, when you are in a uncomfortable space, how do you negotiate an uncomfortable space? Do you freeze? Do you have a paralysis? Are you terrified? Do you hide? Do you, it seems like there's different options of the way that you can handle it. There's a lot of people now who, when they're confronted with things, the whole idea is like, no, I need to go back to the way things were. I need to go back to the past. We can't really go back to the past on a lot of things. We're negotiating a lot of this stuff going forward. Like the topics we've just been talking about today, this is something that we're negotiating going forward. How does this fit into the human lives that we have? And how do we use it in a way that is appropriate, where we can make use of it as a tool without compromising our humanity, right? Without compromising what's essential to us, okay? Because that is something I think that goes beyond a lot of the stuff that we talk about, especially in neuropsychology, neuroscience, and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff there that we're exploring, but I still feel that there is something even beyond that. I mean, that's my experience, actually, that there's something there's an aspect to us that is beyond that particular configuration. So I don't know. I feel like, though, socially, a lot of times we're almost, I don't want to say we're permanently in a liminal space, but I feel like if you want to talk about the theory of kind of accelerating returns, we are not really able to keep up in terms of our soul development with what's going on technologically, with what's going on in the world. Things move so fast now. And Joseph Campbell pointed this out a long time ago. He had said, if you are, basically, he said, we're at a stage where the religious systems, the mythological systems, this like that, they can't keep up with what's going on in the change. And a lot of them are losing their relevance too. They don't have the same relevance because we're not living in the same spaces. Society is shifting in such a quick way. And so the only choice that you really have is to find your own way. But again, if we're kind of operating in this almost continuous liminal space, who guides you through that? Who guides you through that? And in these initiations, there's elders, there's tribal elders or whatever who are going to guide you through something, right? Who guides you through this? How do you find your way through it? Because the way through is not going to be the same for everybody. We don't all belong to the same tribe and practice the same religion or have the same beliefs. It's how do you do that? I mean, it's something, to be fair, that we have to have been done for a long time because we live in a secular society. But I think a lot of the determination to try to go back to old ways of doing things, it just doesn't work. You can't go back to the old-timey religion, right? You can't go back to the way things were. But the question is, how do you move forward? How do you move out of those back rooms? How do you move out of that liminal space and get into a space where you can take something and make something out of that? With making use of the tools that you have in a way that develops you, not something that and this has always been my concern about AI. You don't want something that's going to take the place of you. Okay, you want to make sure that the imperfect you is still there and it still has a validity. There's an aspect to that definitely is applies to all of us. So anyway, we're at 4:03. Wow, I'm surprised how many people joined me today. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for the interesting conversation and questions. This is all definitely interesting things to think about in terms of the body and so forth. I might be looking at it from a slightly different perspective here, but yeah, I appreciate everybody who's came on and shared their thoughts. And yeah, so I hope you all have a great rest of your week. New podcast coming out Monday. Patreon should be getting some new stuff. I love this. Going to be watching from the beginning. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you loved it. I hope you do find it interesting. I'm going to, and I didn't get to go into the solar Chthonia thing, but we'll do that another time. Anyway, have a great rest of your day, everybody, and I will talk to you soon. So thank you. I liked your video on the MudHub videos. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm glad that you did. In fact, I think I'm missing Kali, and she's another one that's going to be coming back up soon in the remasters. So anyway, thank you guys all so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.